Good morning, everybody. For us here, it looks like we're going to fit. And thank you for being here. Colleagues for being here. Sarah O'Brien and Tony Walker. You know which ones. So, as you probably this meeting's as you probably know, we've had third meeting session. Did some basically insert updates. Had a wonderful meeting in Indiana and received a lot of good. At the beginning of each meeting, I've reminded people that there's a long history behind the turnaround law. It was very bipartisan law that was enacted to ensure that children assigned to chronic and that the more ethical and professional obligation of the state to provide a quality bill. So over a long period of time, eventually the state, under Indiana statute, entered lawmakers was signed with almost without exception. I think in one house against it, but so the obligation was set. The board acted on it. So now after experience, we're input of how to make implementation policy recommendation state legislature to make the law even better. Can go what to in Indianapolis with some of our turnaround schools, and so a lot of today's meeting will be focused on Fair City, where to serve there. So thank you to the end, and we think we'll learn a lot. So we've called the meeting to order. I know we have a large contingent of board members, but is there a motion? So all in favor? Unanimous vote. Those are hard to get. So we approve those, and this session. And we have Jackson. And our rules are, and if you want to submit written comment, receive them and read them. So, Mr. Jackson.
Welcome. I want to set my clock here because being a preacher, 3 minutes.
Just warm-up session, huh?
Yeah. So, thank you, Mr. President, to turn around schools. Because I received an email that John Marshall at 38th and but I see that it's not. But I do want to interject, come up eventually. Marshall, I believe, a lot of improvements I was reading an article in the Minneapolis Star dated May of 20. I was talking what was going on in the head. We have a new principal in 20. Of course, this is 2014, and for that May article, there was a different. A year before that, there was a different principal, and I guess and those of you who are individuals know that it takes at least 3 to 5 years to change the culture and to turn a business around. So with respect to that particular turnaround school, has some good people, good partners, a lot of community stakeholders, the CDC, faith-based, the business partnerships, are all working to make sure that in mind, and hopefully in the near future see you all again.
So there's no other public comment desired at this time, and the by Tinley, one of my colleagues.
Yeah, I just see we have committee comments, but Pastor saw media report as to the intervention. Really state that in Gary, that's flat out not Roosevelt High School in Gary to high school. That intervention. To be clear and turn around in general, I think it's maybe just lump all the schools together. But in my neck of the woods, that Roosevelt's not a better school. Our intervention. Thank you.
I think that's, I mean, while we're making that point, we worked with these schools prior and then post, and I would, 3 to 5 years, culture. This isn't a light. One thing we notice is safety, systematic approach to instruction, and kind of a new day, a new belief is pretty consistent. I don't know that we can't say everything overnight, but we have seen upswing. So consistency of leadership. Do this, now do that, do this, now do that, and too many chefs in the kitchen. So that's something you have to have consistency. So do we have someone from the Tinley schools prepared to present today? There's nobody here, and that's so there's not. Okay. Thank you. And now the next question by Indianapolis Public, and they have some ideas on the transition of Arlington.
I believe that they're not here yet, so we might want to move through.
Okay.
And before we move,
Tinley's what?
anyone, they didn't have a single person.
Email that they were business problem within their schools, and so they were.
I saw Mark. Understood. I didn't know they were.
To them and left them message and asked to send somebody, but have not received return from that.
here, they can't now.
Right.
Do we know if they were supposed to present a detailed transition plan? Do we know if that exists, or is that something
We haven't
that-
seen it.
So
They can make some assumptions.
I'm asking Bob. They were supposed to have a training.
They didn't
You haven't
submit
seen it. They're
anything.
not here.
We would anticipate that he wants to participate in the transition plan because of the experiences he stated at the original turnaround committee meeting. But at this point, anything forward.
So are we going to remain in the building?
Oh, yeah.
They've indicated that they are going to do the year.
and Charter USA. And through that communication, I believe that we can collaborate with transition plan through any of the options. I don't think that those communication efforts were in play when we had our initial transition. And so we're willing to and ready to partner to ensure that we have a successful transition. It's great that we're having these conversations now in October because that gives us an enormous amount of time in that planning process. Have an opportunity with students to look at and how we can transition those to transition activities school year, so when the students don't.
Has charter school USA emerged, John Marshall?
Receive any proposal, say, as it relates to Marshall. We have received proposals verbally to change the grade current schools that they in Madonna, Howe, and I believe that they're the same operational challenges that empower know that they're interested in shifting the grade configurations and abilities differently. Site visits, they'll be 30-40% in some cases. We're open to Charter USA about how we better utilize those facilities.
No, that's fine. We had some questions.
A couple. So within recommendation, would you be proposing to close John Marshall and merge those students together? Or do you see more of a hybrid of?
At John Marshall too.
Would be closed?
Yes.
Okay. And then I've read through a variety of proposals for how we proceed at this point. You're in agreement that grades would be an appropriate choice, but you just don't believe it within the.
Right. We don't believe what we received from our legal counsel that it's lawful for the State Board of Education to change the grade configuration as part of the turnaround process. Okay. However, the facility was transitioned back to, we believe it's within our scope responsibility to modify grade configuration.
Okay. And then last question, more for the committee and staff. Our recommendation on Arlington is the timeline for that coming at the same time as the committee round as a whole, or is that a separate entity?
It'll come together, and the board is also going to help facilitate
Perfect.
that conversation with the committee in November.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but, go ahead.
No, that was all I had.
Why Dr. Farabee's here, do we have a clear understanding with is it clear in law what's possible? And lawyers are getting in the room.
This is a question we have to take twice, study with legal teams and all the legal questions, so give us some time to look at that.
Okay, but you have your attorney thinks it's not possible.
Correct, and I believe, based on this was a point of discussion to change grade configuration and determination that it was unlawful to do so.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, Dr. Farabee, as we went through this process, and it's become clear really through our whole school is part of a system. It's part of a culture, community, a systems, processes. Individuals has flaws. So I think we're going to have to look at that, where we might go with it. A couple questions. C certainly is nice to build community support. If some regard to this, in the near future, like the next 30 to 60 days, would there be enough time of option C squeezed into a 4-month period instead of a year long? In other words, if you took option C off the table, but still engagement with the community A or B, probably if everybody worked together. In other words, option C is you get a lot of community input, support. Could get into a 4-month, somewhat.
I'm glad. So I want to be in recommendation B. Maximum community. The difference between those options is change the instructional focus, which would allow to create an option across the district to create a choice option. It could be revitalized instructional focus on career and technical education. It could be, some other instructional model. But
So you might take on a larger kind of scope and plan if you
correct.
If you had the 12.
Concern is we increase the student enrollment for it to work financially, and so the current enrollment alone, revitalize to bring in create what would back the need.
Facility is for the John.
The Arlington again does not have the facility associated with a high school, and again, Arlington is part of states, and so work done at Arlington to better serve the John Marshall students.
We have not used 13 under that, just basically a charter school, the IPS governance board, right?
And it's not limited to schools.
A private, it was operator in a way, you'd give it
Correct.
to operator, would that you and the board, you interact with the state, or how we have a unique situation, collaborative process, or how do you?
I would see it as a given that the school is still under takeover.
Yeah.
I see that on ultimately, I think it would be the commissioners relates to responsibility to instrumentation. Make sure though that that in conversation with and the Department of, and then would expect to provide
all the way through P20, a P20 school. In fact, when we started trying to work with Arlington in 2010-11, we had an adult learning center in the school that we were trying to get on board, and that was through IUPUI. So our proposal involves all of the ingredients that come from the school's model. That is a national model. I believe you have some of those documents also presented. With the document of community schools, ingredients in terms of the inputs that go straight to that goes all the factors that so that you can get, and that's in it's with that diagram. Essentially, our proposal is for community school. I won't, which are in the proposal. One of them that was, as you were discussing, is strong, stable, caring, competence. We know, even under the turnaround, Arlington has gone through, I believe, principles, and of course that is extremely disruptive to the community. And also with this proposal, we're asking for a ability system and to do, and I said that before August 6th, it has nothing to do with persons. We believe people operate as best they can. So it has to do with the system. But the accountability system that's in place right now, the transition from the State Department to the city, it has nothing to do with the persons who have those tasks, because we feel very much that they are doing the best they can. But there's some weak links in that system itself. So thank you.
Carol, may I ask
Yes.
you, that system has a lot of links. Because their State Department comes around, the State Board has a few interests, the city has some interest, IPS has some interest. I use the analogy when there's a lot of people throwing spice in a pot of stew, sometimes the stew doesn't taste so well. And you just have too many people. Is that what you're
Yes, sir.
saying? Okay. We need to stream.
Yes.
Let people do their best work and.
Absolutely. If you don't mind me saying, we had a discussion earlier about what we've noted. When you have factors that you want to use to measure a system, if there is no accountability with those factors, what you'll end up with is just a checklist.
Mhm. And you know, it's interesting, the public hearings at Arlington, Broad Ripple, I sat in the gyms at all these schools, Madonna, before the decision was made. The final decision, ramp up a year of consultants. But that was one of the themes we, the record, it was one of the most consistent themes. They started this instructional program from math, and then a new one came in. Then they started this on the language arts, and a new one came in, the rules came in, and rototilling of direction that are given leadership has been that nothing can grow it. We just keep tilling the ground. And so what a consistent, clear direction, accountable.
Yes.
Pretty clear message. Thanks for writing the paper.
Thank you. Thank you for
And
the
this-
opportunity.
Any other
Yeah, I
questions?
just have a quick question. So, green line. Current, do your recommend?
Not want to comment. We are respectful of others, respect IPS, and we are, so we would like with IPS, but we are, because we feel that the actual of the community who live there, and I had an opportunity to.
Because, I mean, for living in Annapolis, I don't really here, but it was my understanding that the board sort of turned solely to, so I'm thinking there's really accountability.
I on that.
So, of it, and just have the mayor's office do it as I said they were gonna do.
I would not comment. Thank you.
Just a comment
Yes.
that of community and involvement for
Okay.
wills. So just everyone involved paper and general responsiveness children with.
Thank you. I care so much and we with urban the families social capital are the come forward as much as sometimes people interpret that is absolutely if you go to any of the church you go to any of the communities any of the people care to do what I'm able to do to spend time to speak out. So with our organization we can and whenever we
I'll just say what, in driving, seared in my mind from some of the community school and larger, when school failing, where's voices and everything do this anymore? Basically house large groups of children are not working. Well, we got here because
that's right.
aspersions on are clear. What was happening, the performance for those children really limited their ability to participate in the economy or whatever. And I was, how did that get so community where it's faculty or this cannot go on. Only how the state ended up. It really wasn't an exciting adventure for us after intervening. It was just a responsibility to do it, and see now we have everybody's but more people's attention, and what we have to do is direct that attention and sustain it, because this will be a project. So thanks for being here, and let's keep people in for the long haul, huh?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Okay, Charter School USA has a presentation, detailed petition for relief, Emma Donahoe and Manual High School. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Yes. Push. Oh, excellent. To introduce Paula Jackson, of Development Government, our Chief Academic Officer, and our principal of the T.C. Howe campus. One of the things that you asked presentation is provide you with some guidance and feedback around, and we thought we'd take a minute to, since we've had some time since the last, to go through those policy refinements. There was 3 foundational elements that are key to academic improvement that we operate for this. One is early intervention and 3 is financial sustainability. Obviously, those connect with each other, and during our proposal phase of this, we will connect those for you. The second part of that is to expand under the flexibility and freedom to expand or reconfigure grades served. You've probably heard that now from all presenters. You will continue to hear that because there's consensus around that as a policy. Obviously, there's the legal discussion around that, which we could answer to the degree we know, but we do know that there's no one different of ensuring that there is configuring grades children at an early age, especially since we know from the NWEA data where those students are coming to these schools and how decision-making authority should be centralized. All operators should have the same structure, and we believe that expectations should be aligned with the consistent basis. I also want to point out here, though, that through the process that the state board moved, and you'll recognize we've had kind of 3 bosses so far in 3 years. First, the state board, second, the department, and then now the city. And ultimately still back to the state board, since you do hold the contract with us. That the city's rigorous accountability framework has been an exceptional model with that, and they've made the work they've done with schools and that ability to work with us was a very big plus, and I want to give them the shout out for that, because it was a framework we think is world class, and it was one that was utilized, and they did tweak it appropriately to appropriate for turnaround versus. It was a great framework. Right to the proposal. One of the proposal is the request, but to propose a 5-year contract extension. And here's the reasons. To address concerns around disruption to student education and uncertainty for both the city government and the operator. We are having direct already at this point in the contract. As you may know, we're in our 3rd year. We have 2 years of operation, year of turnaround or investment. So we're actually in our 3rd year of operation of the contract. So what this means is by the end of next school year, it ends. Obviously, we employ over 300 plus educators in Indianapolis. These educators are aware of these discussions, and it's important to their futures and their understanding, as well as to these parents and these communities, to know, will we continue to have these schools, and will we continue to see our teachers and know our principal and know the established leadership that's in place for these schools. It provides that stability. It also allows for better time. We're obviously in the mode of continually finding and acquiring high quality talent and recruiting those. It also creates an opportunity for continued academic progress. It's real, and it's obviously they're coming out here as early as October 15th. We look forward to those scores. Those scores will reflect turnaround work to be a success, since we are now 0.3 years in intervention and giving that Dr. Fair and we believe all operators and say you need that set the baseline. And then it generates time to develop a final transition plan, which we do believe is important, that these schools do not always stay in this status. The transition plan should be upon performance, both of the operator and the aligned set out. Component 2 is to allow expanded grade levels to offset financial loss from this, which was one of the for increased enrollment, term sustainability. CSUSA has taken a little different perspective during this process than maybe some of the other operators. Our view of this is that scale does matter. We operate 3 of provides 3 schools. Operator running 70,000 students across the United States, and we are in for the long term. We've also been willing and currently able to invest actually in these schools, knowing that the long-term benefit will come back as the schools perform. It also establishes, as you expand grades to a K-12 or even a pre-K-12 into these 3 camp feeder pattern, that creates a comprehensive, which CS experience, and so and evidence to produce when you expand the grades, because we have it cultural aspect that we talked about. It was families because the count for a kindergarten grader, seventh grader, transportation are aligned, and for families, and leads to better academic outcomes, which is a proven result, which I think provides the turnaround expectation of, and it gives us higher confidence to be willing to be, knowing that we have over the entire. Component 3 is flexibility buildings themselves to utilize space, especially with Imadon. A very specific problem there is that it's a 7th and 8th grade. 65 population is a new. It's an unheard of a model that we would, I think, from saying that culturally it's almost
So
impossible.
there's no, there's
at
no
all.
institutional.
Well, 50 because they're obviously 7th or 8th grade. And then the agility rate within that community, which is historically has a high mobility.
But even if everybody stayed, you're always going to lose 50.
Minimum.
And then if you have a few faculty, you always have churn.
Yes, sir.
Culture, you have to have memory.
And so it's just a really flawed model, to be honest. I believe that a feeder school there, down into that kindergarten level, and that underutilized, solve many of those problems. Utilizing the facility, academically producing better schools. And it obviously pathway to the is Manual High School. Historically, for Manual. So what we're
Is Thomas Carr 7 through 12?
so 7th through 12th grade school, and the principal asking many questions in that campus. Utilizing a campus that has a middle high school involved population, we know how to manage that well and correctly in a way that ensures the highest degree of safety as well as separation of students between the 7th graders and 12th graders. As well as Dr. Farabee made the same point, we do believe that these facilities would allow for K-12 solutions that both keep safety at a high priority as well as academic rigor and separation appropriate for age levels.
Cervic, how? Pardon me?
631.
Okay, thank you. And that building could probably hold, that's a big building.
Yeah, it's beautiful too.
It is, it's beautiful.
Looks like a college. 8 students at 600 at Howe and 600. So a total going to be about 1,600 students.
The early intervention. John mentioned data that's coming in. We do use it as our benchmark. Students at House, 7th graders, to us on average in math on a 4th grade mid, and our 7th grade students in reading are coming to grade beginning to mid-year level. Those are our incoming 7th graders at Howe. Our incoming 7th graders at Donnan are coming at about a 5th grade level, and our reading average is grade mid-year level at Donnan. So those are our 7th graders, and where they're entering academically below grade level. Significant.
We were asked also the
May I ask you a
reality.
question there?
Yes, sir.
And somewhere, if you could do the record, and there'll never be perfect correlation, give me some data of a K through 6 or 8 school you operate with similar demographics and show me the performance you're able to achieve. I mean, you can even put it in the written record. If you have something immediate, I'll listen, but I would like to know, do you have evidence where you can operate a school with similar socioeconomic background? In other words, could you deliver to Madonna, I said that wrong.
So with our downtown Miami charter school, you could K-6, to 95% free and reduced lunch, similar demographics. It has been an A school for us the last 3 years, high performing. That is the K-6, but that when we can enter our students. And if you look at the book called Annual Growth, there is research that shows students in first grade that end first grade by fourth grade are still below grade level. The research is showing us that early intervention is extremely important in the process for educational and efficiency and excel. So that would be our Wells School in our Four Corners School.
during the school. That is, in fact, something.
Year chart solely anticipating some.
Educational perspective, what is growth based on. So the only thing we're really positioning here, we have no interest in doing, and that's couple things. Extension of grades, the extension to the extent, and it does anticipate at the end of that 5 years. That transition would depend on the performance. If the performance continues to meet or exceed expectations based on state guidelines, then that could, under the new law, provide for a charter school conversion. To not be met, other options, including transfer back to IPS, or potentially some hybrid model that's allowable.
What I don't see, I'm sorry, I just one more follow-up. What I don't see in any of the components is any participation of IPS.
So we currently believe that the structure that's been put in place with the understanding that IPS and leadership continued today. Say, good relationship with Dr. Fairby, had multiple. It's not to say that their own house wouldn't be continuing to do more collaborative, like lead to a different, determine the outcome as much as we continued progress academically.
Are you saying, or do you impede or slow your progress, make an academic case to partner them in at this point?
We believe that there's, we believe that formula for the current model, and to continue.
That sounds like a yes. All right, thanks.
I have a couple of procedural one. Obviously, we looked at what happens on the back end of these turnarounds recently and what our different options are, as were just mentioned a moment ago. Do we have a timeline in place for when we initiate that process to ensure that there is a transition plan?
There is some flexibility, but the statute this past session says by the board has to make some decision. It's intended to make sure time for a successful transition. That doesn't preclude you from making a decision now at the end of this committee's work.
Okay, but that's on our planning calendar then, and we'll be able to make sure that that happens.
When this committee makes its final report to the board, which should be December,
Right.
time to have to act on.
Okay. You mentioned in your at specific agreed upon metrics. We spoke quite a bit about more about that and referring to, and I believe that your this had have as well. So can you get kind of how you would frame that?
One of the things that process, and I think members and folks been a part of the process would, given the that transition year, not unlike maybe pulling the Band-Aid off at some point, sometimes you're just better. That would have definitely been a better situation, even with the challenge to train a year and a half. Mind the community is already low given the historical performance of those schools, where parents that had different decisions at that we lost a significant in that first year transition process, which we don't need to go back and go through it all, documented in board meetings, the press, how difficult it was, where equipment was missing. One day, TC Howe, and the next day, the boundaries were changed, or student records that were not available literally for months, if not a year, while we were educating those same students. So it was a pretty difficult situation, by which if we were asked to do that again, we would kindly deny that opportunity. But I think given that you also have experience at this point, you have experience in the law. You have data on my team, and in this case, there's a yes, having them sooner is better, as long as you and experience is the operator a certain amount of depth. I think the fact that one of the advantages we bring is we have a national operation across the United States with significant depth and investment that we're willing to make that short-term investment for that long-term result. And I think that's part of what the state has to always consider in these processes. It's intended people that want to business consequences of and how significant it can be. These schools can easily, go from a balanced budget to being $2 million under within a very short period of time, and that's significant money that an operator has to be in a position, given the flexible position of the state on our part, and that this year. I mean, we're not going to, can't whitewash that away, that there was significant financial consequences to these and reduction in SIG funding for these schools. It had impact on programs, specifically for students. There were specific programs aligned under the federal rules for how those monies were implemented. We follow those rigorously. We have experience in that nationally, and it had an impact. And so we do, there being a need, it's a critical juncture to, in fact, intervene and make tweaks, policy recommendations, changes to meet us halfway and that are committed to the long-term success of these students. I'm not sure if he fully answered your questions either. Maybe Ms. Sage can answer them more on the first year's data. I want to make sure I understood it.
I was curious how you saw that transition more so.
One other thing that I think we were hinting at in that particular bullet point was the fact that we cannot overstate the importance of building in the first year of operation. So beyond the transition year, the metrics need to be reductions in incidents of violence, attendance, the types of things that are measured but show up in the first year. Build if the students feel like they can learn, we need to have a strong beginning as opposed to dynamic in year one. So it's about.
So you see a shifting report back to us basically based on the year of operation. Okay. Just one more question there then. Obviously, we need to get a little more feedback on the legality of expanding grades and how that would be affected with this program. If it were a legal option within the consideration of opening a Charter Schools USA feeder school
sessions, consultations, and these that have research-based strategy about the most effective culturally responsive materials setting. Throughout the tenure of our charter schools, you have shown a genuine interest in improving the instruction educational students from urban and also economically, they're willing to financial resources, professional development for us to work directly is a sustainable matter of seriousness to educational as communities and associates. We support charter. In an ever-changing landscape, it is important that charter and turnaround demonstrate the communities that they serve. Now that they will provide not only with educational excellence to innovative, informative work that they serve.
Thank you. Anything else from committee? School USA? Staff meeting? I appreciate it, John. Thank you. When you're falling out, I know having been in your seat.
If you want to lose some hair.
A lesson in that not.
I think he had one more slide.
Oh,
Did I didn't mean to.
there was the, we're not here to propose, you know, what happened. Would we have any interest? We basically laid out just that if evaluating our services there, we're flexible to like IPS would do, quite frankly. And we'd want to start a new project for us. You know, we're here to answer questions if you have it. We're not selling either, quite frankly. We want to continue to have good success in the schools we're operating. If there was a serious consideration and need for us to talk to you about Arlington, we'd be happy to do that with staff if that's what you desired. And if not, we'd be fine to continue doing what we're doing.
So when you say we wouldn't say no, does that mean you really don't want it?
No, it's just that there's a lot of moving parts in this process, to be fair. And I think to the degree that the lessons learned from the past are implemented for the future so that they're not repeated in Arlington would indicate for us, I think, as a partner, to be honest with you, that we would want to make sure and have confidence in that those were actually a part of the process. We do not want to overpromise and underdeliver in any of these things. We're really committed for the very long term to do good by kids here. So I think our view of it is that a lot of that depends upon the state board's final adjustments to turnaround itself, including transition periods, how they look, understanding the financial landscape for the next 5 years, having some certainty around that, having the ability to flexibly expand grades. So I think to the degree that if those kinds of issues are on the table and they're right and aligned and we're the right partner and you have confidence and we have confidence, then we can have that conversation. If it's better in the behalf of the state to work this through with IPS or through other processes, we would support that as well and get right behind that and give it full support. So it's not for us to say what's in the best interest of those students. It's what we would want to have the right to earn that if in fact that was the right thing to do. On the other hand, if there's a better route, we would support that.
So does we wouldn't say no include a 50-50 operational partnership with IPS?
I'm not going to say no to anything, Tony. I think everything should be on the table. We want to see kids succeed. I mean, we're flexible. I think the private sector opportunity gives us the ability to be flexible, to implement things quickly, adjust We've made a lot of progress with Dr. Fairby and his team, and I might not have said that before under previous leadership, but I would say under this leadership, we would be open to that. But we'd also want to bring up the significant questions that would come about in that arrangement as well, which are real, and not get into a situation where we couldn't be aligned for success. School boards and superintendents come and go too, right? And so right now I have a lot of faith in what Dr. Fairby's doing, but I also, he might not be the superintendent in 2 years. And if we're in that involved model, 50-50 with them, I would want to look at really what that looks like and understand so that we didn't have a situation that would dramatically turn on us and not be in a position where we can continually be successful in the schools.
I also don't want to, one thing we've learned, and I'm open to anything too, not anything, but looking at options, I want clarity.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we hit a direction, the students deserve it, their parents, and the community. And
Yes, sir. So sorry I forgot about that last one, but that was, thank you very much.
thank you. There's been a request for a 3-minute recess, so it'll probably be 5. We'll say 3, and we'll start in 5. All right, thank you. No, thank you for being here. I'm here. Yes. Oh, I'm getting old, sir.
I don't know if they, my guess is they didn't respond to the mayor's office either. Their history is they don't respond. Unless it's in their self-interest.
We're rolling. No. You're reminded. Okay. There we go. Here and just as an education mayor, helping oversee the school, we deputize the mayor's office with the community and all. And we over a year ago now.
Transitioned in June.
Transition. So now we're going to hear perspective. And appreciate you being here. Appreciate your hard work. By the way, I would share someone in this process gave a shout out, a positive kudo for when you presented that, and I've seen those reports. We're going to want to preserve that. I think there's either whole or in part. It's an outstanding piece of work. Key indicators should be efficient report. You can read it quickly. So thank you for your work on that. Let's make sure we preserve that in the record because it'll be something for us, I believe, to use in whole or part. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to present today. I'm gonna run quickly through our oversight. You all have seen this information multiple times, and then we'll talk about our recommendations for transition. So our oversight, we took over oversight in June of last year, and we did so because of clear vision alignment, local control, and stakeholder support. Our oversight systems and processes include monitoring and reporting performance other community stakeholder groups. We use a performance framework, which Mr. Elsner just talked about, that assesses the schools on 4 core questions. Core question 1 is the educational program a success. Core question 2 is the organization in sound fiscal health. Core question 3 is the organization effective and well run. And then core question 4 is the school providing the appropriate conditions for success. And we look at our turnaround as a holistic, instead of just evaluating schools on of factors. We developed a monthly template that allows us to report information to the State Board of Education that allows tracking of student enrollment. So you can see from month to month, is enrollment increasing, is it decreasing? You can look at student suspensions and expulsions, which we've talked a lot about lately, how schools are working to improve in those areas. And then we have a master calendar of reporting requirements that we designed. And basically what it does is it outlines all of the documents that we collect throughout the entire school year for the operators. So they know every month in advance, this is the documentation that we need, a membership report or a graduation report. So it's clearly laid out and hopefully makes the process more efficient. So in terms of performance, the schools have made progress in a number of areas. Academics, and we shared this information before, and I'll share some more information. We've seen increasing I-STEP scores in ELA and math. The teachers are invested in the success of the students. Quality curriculum, I would have to say CSUSA does a really in terms of safety, schools are dramatic, less, and we all know that it's very difficult to learn. It's chaotic and not safe. So that's and you know 2 years to ensure and the school. An overall culture. Schools, it's a lot encouraging and you want to be, and not a place that's unsafe. So in terms of, as I said, academic gains, while we know we see more progress, that we've seen academic gains. So in I-STEP scores at Howard, Arlington, and I believe accountability data is shortly that you'll also see in ECA scores as an overall improvement. So in terms of areas for growth, while there have been academic gains for growth, and we do school work on the schools to improve. And when you're looking at student, staff, and stakeholders, I think student recruitment, as we talked about this summer, the fact that our only had 300 for facility, 80,000 square students and engaged staff. And I think one of the establishment of this committee, there will be a so CSUSA, you know, whoever to operate, hey, 3 to 5 years, and it helps retain. And then with stake, I think parent and for growth, community investment, to look at it as a two. I think community stakeholders such as of organizations to the communities in which it, but I think we to those that are going to be affected by these decisions, the parents, the students actually live in these communities, attend these schools, so have their voices heard. board makes a decision as. So I will let Brandon.
May I ask you something real quickly about students?
Absolutely.
We have questions. Tony, you said it'd be hard. Doesn't think Roosevelt's a better school. Do we have any surveys, quality groups? Tell me that the parents trajectory in school right now under these.
Yes, the Pensaris consult, which we provided the board with focus groups. Did say that they was happening at the school and that the schools and before the takeover. You asked, they would certainly a lot better than they were.
The material, we could just exect out from all the. That's any interaction. And I see some performance data.
And I think also in the interactions I've had and the interactions the staff in our office have had, because we get the parent phone calls and we receive that information, and I can attest that the parents, I think overall, are much happier. Has happened since the takeover.
Kind of survey the young people we're serving?
No, we haven't.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just kind of add on to that. A lot of negative phone calls from families now than we did in year one. And I would say that qualitative evidence that the families are happier. So we do want to give some broad recommendations. I don't think that we want to get too granular in terms of choosing new operators or saying whether or not the school should move to this entity or this entity, but we've learned a lot during this process. In the first row during the first, myself nodding my head. Thing. So a lot of what you're going to see I mentioned several times. What I do want to focus on piece. So I've been in our current year and a half, and we've learned a lot throughout that process. I think that the main, and I think that this was said multiple times already, streamline oversight. So we were really happy to take on our role. The challenge of our role is that we don't hold the contract. So we have an MOU and with the operators, we can make recommendations, provide oversight, but really at the end of the day, we make recommendations to you. So a lot of times, I think if you're an operator, you're being managed by multiple. So we've been talking a lot with operators around what can we do, what can PCI and the DOE, to make sure that we're working together to create systems and processes that are much more streamlined. So when we think about our oversight, we felt like we're open to working with our long-term oversight system is to make. We'd love to play a part, and I think that it should be much more structured. A office lacks access to a lot, at the student level, entities do have. So you, the DOE, to like, we don't have that access. So schools to give us data, DOE to give us data, and when we get it, work with the schools, and then thinking through for how do we report that? How do we streamline? A lot of times the operator things, the things in that process. Oversight piece before I move.
No. What we've heard.
I just did want to, we do strongly believe invested numerous times. The mayor's office is unique because we are local. This with many, we're meeting community engagement. I think community meetings.
Just in the
Just in education. So we believe that we need to be working with parents. So we think the oversight structure is families and communities. Finally, we do think that the table is to ever repeat, right? So there are general uncertainty between the operator and knowing that this to a lot of information, manage the bus route, they zone the schools, the facilities, you have a partner in the school. That doesn't mean that the school mean that that district process has to have a table.
Okay, may I ask you, at a table is one thing,
Yeah.
but I mean, how do you have everybody, you know, in a service for children?
Yeah.
That gets a little complicated.
One, I think, is the contract between the operator to be revised. Really figuring out what are the of collaboration between the district, whether it be food service, what we're doing to maintain the facility, get extremely clear on the front end, consultation. What I would say is that there was clarity in terms of with the school district. Then you saw a transition leadership about a year. So contract continued with maybe new that are much more collaborative. You know, this is an opportunity and, you know, clearly laying out the areas where the operators in the school district can collaborate, and it's probably through that contracting process.
Do you think the law's flawed in that regard? In other words, should we just, is it flawed fundamentally?
Yes. We so oversight, and I think the 5 charter schools that are operated by Tinley, and we also oversee Arlington. When you look at the, you know, what we see in charter schools, relatively small facilities, low cost. When we take that model to a large $300,000.
300,000.
Yeah.
Taxpayers, please.
Massive buildings. Right? You can't financial model in that situation. You need to do a facility. Think about how do we use more effectively. So we have a role in that our folks are spending and using. Our largest school district and the average school is at 40. So we're with turnaround schools. These students, all 1,900 turnaround in one building. We're doing 4 school buildings, 1,900 students. The financial model for the school operators get money for the facility on a school district operate, and with cooperation, that it's 1.4 million with only 300. That's half your operating on the facility costs.
48%. school. The new charter doesn't include charters.
Chamber of Commerce report months ago, average only at 48% single high school over. Why I think with the mayor's office worked with on to figure out It's important to the mayor that we don't make it with schools that are showing would move those schools back. So in Schools USA schools, when they are academic goals. When performance framework, progress, we recognize that progress.
Does that mean you support a?
We're not going to get into the work Charter Schools USA would be comfortable with. The question for our now and time-sensitive question is we don't have an operator that we, I think, had some very, that we don't have a position on that as until we see very detailed plans, right? One thing to schools together from an efficiency standpoint, we would also want, like we look at our charter capital strategy, look like, what is your, what's your financial strategy? I'm making a recommendation. So we have very detailed plans that gave us the confidence that the gains that we're seeing at Arlington, which are pretty significant especially, will be.
Does your idea of Arlington back to IPS at this point in time?
We did work very extensively on crafting 1321, which is but one strategy, I think, to have more over the process. We work with an operator to, that was number 2, 3 plans that he gave you today. That and I think our opinion would mean that you have to end, which then clearly comes with some risks. But that is one example of a vehicle, like you said, Dr. Elsner, that would genuinely bring IPS to the table. It would be their facility, they would count the kids, would count from IPS, but the school operator would have the operational autonomy to run the school. So that's one out of probably several hybrid models because investment and quality see in the past.
Because I mean, the question in my mind is how do IPS and Gary Community School actually benefit from if at some point they aren't engaged with the turnaround operators and actually operating the schools?
That's right.
That's right. 21 we haven't done this before, but essentially would have the school in their sphere, their test scores, their finance, point of pride, just have a different management.
That's right. And we don't want to make a formal recommendation today because we don't know who that operator would be, what that plan would be.
No, I'm not asking, I'm for clarity here. That may be, it's obviously something we're gonna look at very closely.
Right. So. We worked extensively with Dr. Farabee on that because his belief, and he said this, is that he cares less about who the operator is, more about the quality of education that the kids living within his district receive, which is why I think he worked on us on 1321 to give him one more tool in his toolbox. From our trying to create incentives to innovative folks that wanted, and creating incentives like the through the school district, all the accountability grades through the school district kids for their enrollment. Wanted to give incentives to say, we're now going to go to help on the educational piece. We're also going to help because of these success of these schools. Yes, right. So right now, performance on separate school corp. 1321 schools. You have to be one option that are,
Looking at either can speak. What's the assurance? I'll continue all analogies and metaphors, but to me, well, what's the assurance the district that has a lot on their plate will stay out and the operator one operator clear as 1321 much influence with the board some authority have to ensure way back to there were some this and here comes this and then we change that and then